Yes, welcome back to the No Stay Project. I don't know what happened. I guess since I moved the computer from the fortified compound in Mesa, Arizona over here and driving in yesterday, one of the settings was off. So none of the audio from Trevor and what he said was talking to me about. He had court yesterday. And and that's the thing, you hit a judge with a difficult hypothetical. Use that as an excuse not to answer a question. Why is that an excuse not to answer a question? Am I entitled to a fair trial? Well, that's a hypothetical if you're going to get a fair trial. They answer that. So welcome back, Trevor. And I'm sorry, I got it fixed. So everyone should be able to hear your audio now.
Sure.
So I do apologize for that.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully everybody is going to switch over and catch the because we still have a lot of most of the show to still do. Okay. So you were telling me that you have this train wreck yesterday in Oregon court, and the judge answered a few questions, but had a real issue with the hypothetical that you asked. So nobody got to hear that. So
right.
Then he also gave you a ration of crap and didn't allow you to ask questions regarding the police officer's complaint that's to you. And this goes right into some of the criticism that people have been launching, that no witness may be able to testify on the applicability of the law, even though that is a prior statement that they have said. And they're using Rule 702. I got news for you, Misty. Rule 702 does not have an application. I can print what Trevor was doing in traffic court yesterday. Rule 701 or 702 doesn't even come into play. But even if it did, even if what you're saying is completely accurate, the fact is the rules have to give way to due process. They have to be read and administered in a way to ensure fairness and due process. So if somebody, well, that's a special one and he can't do that. No, I don't. And I'll go into the details again why that is absolutely ridiculous. So, Trevor, so you had asked if there was a conflict of interest, could he get a fair trial? And he didn't want to answer that one.
Would not answer it.
Wouldn't it? So did you follow up and ask him who he is acting on behalf of that, during, that day?
No, I kind of wimped out on that one. Again, he was getting a little hot on, and I wanted to be able to get to the facts or evidence that you submit, that apply to me. So I backed off of that one for a second. When I asked him if the police officer, if he had filed a valid cause of action, the judge jumped in quickly and said I couldn't ask that question, that it was an improper question. And I asked him to clarify, are you saying that I can't ask that question, or are you saying that he's incompetent to answer it? And he said, it's improper. Can't ask that.
For what purpose? He did file. So for those listening, who filed the complaint as the complainant?
Right.
The cop did.
Yeah, the officer.
So what he's saying is the cop can file a complaint against you, and whether that was a valid complaint or not doesn't enter into it. Not a valid question to ask. So to me, it goes to competency and, of course, credibility. Did he file a complaint he believed was accurate? Did he file a complaint he believed was valid, or did he file a complaint he didn't know it was? How are these not subject to cross-examination on competency and credibility? That you asked an improper question. Of course, the judge was only doing the right thing. I disagree with that because, like the issues I just raised, it goes to why did he file that complaint there? Did he believe it was valid? We're not saying that we're asking a cop to ultimately determine whether it was a valid cause of action presented. Just that, did he believe he was filing it? It goes. So the same thing is, why did you file? Why did you follow me? Because you have things like probable cause and whatnot. So asking a police officer, why did you follow me? Is it because you believed that I was violating the law? Isn't that a valid question to ask? What was his motivation in following you, in stopping you? But the critics would have you say, no, that's only for the judge to decide. I don't think that doesn't make any sense to me. And it's not because I'm retarded. It's not because I'm a scammer. Make any logical sense. The motivations for the police officer to make an arrest are subject to cross-examination. And if the rules in some interpretation don't has to bend to a due process requirement that you're entitled to a fair trial and to confront the witness against you. I don't think Rule 702 or 701 even enters into it because you're asking the police officer to testify as to why he did what he did. And that is a subject for cross-examination, a proper subject for cross-examination. Okay, so you also told me that, well, no, you had gotten to that point where they weren't going to allow the police officer to answer a question like that. What other questions did you then ask the sir after that?
At that point, there was a little banter back and forth between the judge and myself. I had asked him if does this court recognize and observe the Supreme Court rulings? And again, the judge is just escalating from here. He's just getting more and more aggravated and frustrated and shorter answers. He's like, yes.
Okay, I do want to point out. Wait. That's a better question to be asking on for the judge prior to a cross-examination. It's on cross-examination. It would be, I think, a proper argument to, if he's derailing your cross-examination.
Yeah, and again, because there were so many preliminary questions before the officer even got stated anything, the judge was just, like I say, he just getting more and more frustrated, and I wanted to get to the part where I could at least ask some questions of the cop before I get kicked out of there. So after I asked him whether or not this court recognized Supreme Court, I asked him, what did I ask him? Is there evidence of a complaining party? And he said, yes, the state of Oregon. I then asked him,
why are you asking? Well, the thing is, wait, Trevor, the thing is, these, I've gone through this for a number of years now, and I've updated the script. We don't have the opportunity to, and generally the time to ask those. So you should have been going right for the throat and discussing the issues regarding the stop. And that is, and I want to address, this has got to be one of the dumbest comments I've seen, even on YouTube. And that is saying something. Misty is saying, asking why is asking for an opinion, which Rule 701 governs. That is ridiculous. So you ask a police officer, why did you stop me? He can't answer that question. You see the stretching and how unbelievably close-minded some of these people are. But can you imagine you ask that police officer on the stand, why did you stop me? Objection, calls for a legal conclusion. What it comes down to is, no matter, Misty, your mind is, and Galt, your mind is so damn made up that no matter what is, and let me ask you this, Trevor, since this has happened to you. At any time, did the police officer answer or say that you violated the law, that you violated a statute?
He did when he read the ticket.
Oh, so he was allowed. He was allowed to give legal opinions on his direct examination.
Yep.
Oh,
he said that I certify under ORS 153.
Yeah. So Misty and everyone else, the idea that your rules prohibit cops from giving legal opinions on the stand really holds no weight, because in practice, which is what we're talking about, in practice, like I said in the last video and article, they do it every single day. They testify you violated the law. So if I can ask a question as to why you pulled me over, then I can ask him questions regarding why he believes the laws apply to me. And to say that they don't. All right. So look, I'm sorry, Trevor. This is your call.
It's okay.
So at any time, did the judge or prosecutor, if there was one, did they stop the police officer from giving opinion testimony and opinions on the law?
No, because all he said was he read a statement as to, and this is full radar ticket, that the machine had been tested, that the records were on file, that he issued the ticket in good standing with, in accordance with the ORS, and that he felt that he had sufficient evidence.
Okay, well, let me put you on hold. We're up against the top of the hour break, so just hold time. My name is Mark Stevens, and we're talking with Trevor in Oregon about the train wreck he had in Oregon yesterday, because where police officers can give legal opinions on the stand as long as it is on direct examination, but follow-up questions are prohibited, and that is supposed to be fair. I cry BS on that. It's not fair. If they're going to allow them to give legal conclusions, hold on. If they're going to give legal opinions before the trial and they're going to give legal opinions, they're going to give legal opinions during the trial, then to cross-examine them on that should be permitted, or they have to strike they have to strike it. So, ay vey. All right, we're going to go to break. I'll put the feedback on. So welcome back to the No State Project. Second of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the Liberty Radio Network. And anarchy meaning no rulers, not no rules. Apparently, it's the utopian idea that people should be consistent in their morality, and that if you reject that it's okay to lie, steal, kill, and cheat other people for no other reason, and you call yourself a government, that if you accept the proposition that basic principles of right and wrong, such as do no harm, live honestly, that they don't apply to those people, then you're an idiot, and and that somehow excuses, if you don't accept that and you think that life and people could be better and strive to have a more ethical, moral society, if you believe that and you don't accept that what we have now with a prison system and a a never-ending war machine, yeah, I guess, yeah, we're the ones, yeah. And even if it's something that doesn't happen, not just in my lifetime, but to think that it's not a goal to strive for. Well, slavery's the way it is, Mark. It's the way it is. Child prostitution, all that. That's the way of the world. And it's never going to happen that the world is ever going to get rid of slavery and child prostitution and trafficking. That's the way it is. But, there's more bad news. I didn't know. Dan sent this to me. I didn't know it is a obituary. And I'm kind of up in the air whether I should even read this. It's 2 years old, so maybe it's been out there already. Because I know that there are a group of very sick, perverse individuals, a bunch of lawyers that would just revel in what I'm going to say here. That they just be licking their chops. They getting hard-ons about this. But our friend Michael Fitzpatrick, who was on the show and had gotten a hung jury on the felony tax evasion charges up in Idaho a number of years ago, has passed away. And he passed away on October 2016. So I want to let people know about that. Yeah, the thing is, some of these perverts are going to revel in this and piss all over his memory. But that notwithstanding, my condolences to his family. Sorry to hear about that. But let's get back to Trevor. Trevor, welcome back to the show. So how does this end? This train wreck with this judge in Oregon.
So at this point, I had held it together pretty well. This is about 7-8 minutes into it, and I totally went off script. I tried to object to the fact that the testimony was not personal firsthand knowledge. He said it is. He's testifying to the picture. I said, how's the picture personal firsthand knowledge? He said, you're going to have to move on with these questions. So I turned to the cop. I said, okay, great. What is it your operating presumption that because of my physical location, I had it written down here. Okay. Is it your operating presumption that just because I'm physically in Oregon or in a city or state, your constitution code and ordinance apply to me? And the cop says, yeah. I said, great. What facts or evidence do you rely on to support your claim? And he paused for like 2 seconds and said, I don't understand your question. And then the judge jumped in and said, I'm putting an end to this. This is just ridiculous. I find that the state has met their burden of proof. I find you guilty. And if you want to appeal it, you can go to the Supreme Court. You can go to the state Supreme Court. And so at that point, I just lost it. I said, you know what? This is such a sham. I asked you if I could ask questions. You're accepting testimony, hearsay testimony. You're practicing law from the bench. You're denying me the right of an effective cross. This is nonsensical. And he just got up and left.
What possible motive does he have to hear you say things like that, though? So you're dealing with a crook, and I say that they're crooks, and I have the evidence. When you force strangers to give you money, you're a crook. You're a crook. And so that's why he has violent domination over you, and he has no responsibility. So why is he going to stand there and sit there and listen? I want to address right. It's always that I don't understand, and or you or I, we don't understand the rules. The police officer, if he's going to give legal determinations or opinions on the stand, like he did on direct, then how and why he came up with those determinations are relevant. So if he is determining you violated the law, how he determined you violated the law is the subject of a cross-examination. And this is the thing, is basic logic. And I've asked prosecutors this directly, and they claim that they can prove the laws apply to you by proving that you violated them. But logic, I'm sorry about this, logic dictates you have to prove it applies in the first place. So the idea that you can skip that because that's only the domain of the judge is bull. Because the thing is, Trevor, and I'm sure you went through this yesterday, what is missing here is that Misty and these people seem to think that the judge is there to make a unilateral decision that the law applies, right? And what is the point of having the witness and having the prosecution with the burden of proof? The fact is, the jurisdiction issue is the burden on 100% on the prosecution, whether it's civil or criminal. It's an element of the charge and has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The judge has to base his decision on only what the prosecution has presented, period, or it's not fair. That's why you have objections arguing outside the pleadings. The judge is not permitted by due process or fairness to substitute his own judgment in place of the factual burden of the prosecution. And for them to turn around and say that the cop can make these determinations, but why he made those determinations and how he made that determination, whether it was arbitrary or not, that is off limits. If the prosecution, if the cop was even competent to make that determination, somehow that's off limits. And I don't accept that. You can say that I'm misreading 701 and 702, whatever. People have disagreed with me for years, and we continue racking up success stories. Just on Wednesday, we had 2 more success stories. So yes, I know that lawyers disagree with me. You're pointing out the obvious. I get it. It's because they have a vested interest in the system. Of course they do. So are you going? I mean, you will. Okay, you can appeal it, and you can also do post-conviction relief to have the judgment vacated. So I would do both of them.
Okay. Are those available through your website, sir?
Yeah, you can get both. Well, just you have to get with me. Those are comped. I send that out, and I can help you with the with some of the editing, of course. So just email me, markstevens@mail.com, and I'll get you copies of those templates.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That's how it went. However, if we look at facts, the facts, you have to expect that that's the natural. That's a natural response from him. He's somebody who he held the prosecution's claims as absolutely irrefutable. So.
Yeah, he kept trying to keep me to the photo and the content of the photo and all that kind of stuff. And I said, I understand all that. We'll get to all that. What I'm asking you is procedural questions, and I don't believe that the plaintiff has met their burden, and that's why I'm asking these questions. Well, you just got to move on. You're wasting time.
Oh, sure.
Basically trying to tell me I'm an idiot.
Yeah, well, what you want to do in a situation like that, again, we're asking leading questions. Obviously, they want to go just by the picture. So a good leading question is, does the picture prove jurisdiction? Does it prove that the laws apply and I violated them? If it doesn't, then the picture obviously isn't sufficient to make the prosecution's case. So that's why we have to discuss more about that. All right. Well, I got a line of calls I got to get to. I do appreciate the call. Definitely. No problem. Contact me off air and I will get you a copy of those documents. And so hopefully maybe we can turn it around on appeal or post-conviction relief. My name is Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project and watching streamed live on my YouTube channel. We'll be back in just a moment, so don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project, where I've been pointing out the immorality and criminality of those called government since 1996. Well, we're doing the show since 2006. So, and challenging bureaucrats to make a moral argument in favor of their organization. Go ahead. Try to do it. Try to prove your laws apply without using circular logic and might versus might means right. Try to do it. And so far, no one has been able to, even the critics admit that have come on the show, have admitted. So if you are continuing to believe that government is a moral group of men and women, a moral organization of men and women, call the show, 218-632-9399. Do what no one has been able to do before. But government is different. Government has the law, and the law says it's okay. And that law applies through what? Aggression. So, yeah. So you had to use criminal actions. You had to use aggression to get control. And then once you got control, then you just make up the rules to say, well, Mark can't do it and nobody else can, but we can. Come on. Give me a break. So again, the invitation is there. If you think that people called government, men and women who force us to give them money, if you believe it's a moral organization, call and make your argument. If you believe that their laws apply, present your evidence. Prove that they do. Prove that they do. Because this is one of the stupidest things you could possibly hear is the evidence the laws apply to you is how they punish you after. Well, any government, so the Chinese government could say to Misty or Juan and forcibly take them out of the United States and say, well, we've got you locked in our gulags. That means our laws apply. There's nothing the United States government could do because it's legal. So that's how criminals act. That's how criminals operate. Well, I have this thing and it says Misty owes me $1,000. And it applies to you. It applies because I said so. And if you don't believe me, what we will do is we will just send men to capture you by force and bring you into a cell. And that will then prove you owed me the money because I had jurisdiction over you once I tortured and imprisoned you. Give me a break. Yeah, but government has the law. It's all force. If you believe that might makes right, then I can do whatever I want and take whatever money and property I want from you. I have jurisdiction because I'm using force. It's just not logical. And that is why people don't call to make a moral argument for government on the show. But let's move on. I think we got a California caller here. We got area code 760. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Mark, my name's Ryan. We spoke yesterday. I'm in San Diego, California, actually Oceanside, to be exact.
Brian, you got some beeping behind you. So if you can take care of that, and maybe you're in a car.
Yeah, I pulled over though. So hang on here. There we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
Sorry. So my friend called you yesterday for me on my behalf. Basically, I been to court twice now, and they keep giving me another court date and another judge. The first time I went in there, I asked them, who was the injured party. There's no injured party. I have the right to face my accuser. And they said that wasn't the time to discuss that. So they made another court date for me. The last court date that I had, they just mulled right over me. They didn't hear anything that I had to say, really. And they just gave me another court date of the 15th.
Were you raising right to travel type arguments, though?
I was raising right to travel type arguments. I didn't send any motions to dismiss or anything like that. So that's what I did wrong. I think I need to send those motions in and go about it in their format.
But like I mentioned to Dan yesterday, and I briefly to you, We definitely not want to be making right to travel arguments as that even if they were true at one point, have been overturned. And the problem with raising arguments that are pure, interpretation of law is that they already have 8,000 conflicting, court opinions. And they'll be able to use that against you, satisfy due process, because there's just there's a disagreement in what the law means, and you'll lose every time. So even if you're right and you have a court case, they have cases that conflict with that. That one of the purposes of the Supreme Courts is to resolve conflicts in the lower courts. So it's a very common thing to have, let's say, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in the United States, like it's out here in California, that they are interpreting a particular law different than the let's say the Eighth Circuit. So when you have these disagreements among the circuits, the Supreme Court is to make, part of their job is to determine what the law actually says, and so that you have consistency through all the circuits, so that federal law is not different in Florida than what they're saying it is in Oregon.
Yeah, I have they postponed it to the 15th of this month, so I have to go back. How should I go about attacking it this time to get this thrown out possibly?
Well, if you go by some of the critics, you would use the word attack in a literal sense, that if you can overwhelm the cop and the judge and the prosecutor with force, now you're right. But I'm not advocating that. I don't advocate things like that.
No,
but
I'm not either. I'd rather use facts if I could,
Well, I was just making a sarcastic remark there. I would collaterally attack the prosecutor's arguments, that the prosecutor is making, such as the laws apply because you're physically in California, and gives them jurisdiction, and because the laws apply, that they can charge you with violating those. I would collaterally attack those because if you look at the standards, and this is what I wasn't able to mention yesterday, it's a lot easier, and our burden is far less to show that the prosecution hasn't met their factual burden, as opposed to saying that the prosecutor's legal interpretations are wrong.
Yeah, I haven't even spoken to the prosecutor yet. I went in a week before my last court date to get the evidence that he has against me, and they haven't provided me with anything yet so far. So he can't submit anything to me to say that what the claim is or anything yet. I haven't seen any evidence that he has about any claims.
Well, you have well, we're up against the break, so let me put you on hold. But you have to at least have the complaint. So we'll discuss that when we get back, because there's claims being made in the complaint, obviously, which you want to do a demur to. My name is Mark Stevens. Listen to the No State Project here on LRN.FM and streaming live on my YouTube channel, which is No State Project. We'll be back with Brian in Oceanside in just a moment, so don't go away. Yes, welcome back. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, streaming live on my YouTube channel, No State Project. And if you want to join the big show, it's 218-632-9399, 218-632-9399. Again, if you think you can make a moral argument in favor of government and you're just offended by me and you're going to use that as an excuse to not call the show, post it where don't post it just on this YouTube stream, because like I usually do, and maybe sometimes a lot of times I pull the live stream down so I get the better audio and video up, like I do like with Wednesday's show. But post it where it's permanent. You can also get on my forum at markstevens.net, and then you can post it there. And before someone accuses me of banning, I've only banned a handful of people, and that's because they were trolls or they were lying. If you persistently lie about me, yeah, I don't need that. That's not criticism. That's not taking and showing where my arguments are false. That's just being that's just, it's not. So put it there. And if you think that the laws apply and you have a logical, coherent, evidence-based argument to prove that, then put it on there. But don't waste my time and other people's time saying that politicians are magical, and or maybe you believe that Odin is giving governments these rules that they apply to everybody. That's not proof. Saying something is true doesn't make it true, even if you call yourself a government. At least own up and say, Mark, there's no evidence that the laws apply. It literally is that they're willing to kill you and put you in jail. At least be honest that way. Don't go pretending that their rules apply. Don't go pretending that the laws actually do. It's all about the violence. See, look, you either have evidence and persuasion or you have violence. That's so, if you're going to shill for a criminal organization, be honest about it. And that's the thing. I'll get back to you in a second, Brian. I love how people will say that I'm a scammer, and yet a group of men and women that literally force people to pay them, they're not. Wow. Talk about having a broken sense of right and wrong. Okay, I want to bring them back. Brian, what I was saying before the break is that you have to have some indication of what the prosecution's claims are because you have a complaint, right?
Correct. I mean, all we have is a ticket so far.
Right, but there are claims made in the ticket, right? They're claiming you violated their code, right?
Yes, driving with business license and no registration and no insurance at the time. So I mean, you spoke to the prosecution yet. It's always with the judge talking to me, and I really want to bring up this next time around. Am I allowed a fair trial? And if he says yes, I mean, I should have this thrown out because the judge has been acting as the prosecution and the judge, and from right there, that's illegal, right?
Well, the judge is not permitted by due process and fairness to speak on behalf of a party like that, and especially not to meet, to cover their burden of proof or to substitute his judgment for their facts.
Correct.
So,
yeah. So don't know where to go from here though, because I've brought up everything like you say. I didn't file any motions to dismiss or anything like that. So this time around, I am filing my motions to dismiss and whatnot.
Okay.
And I'm going to follow your script this time.
Good. Well,
so I haven't paid for your script until just yesterday. So now we should be on a better track, I think.
Right. And so the thing is, it's a matter of terminology. In California, the motion to dismiss initially is called a demur. It's really the same thing in substance. What you're showing, among other things, that the facts as put in the complaint are not sufficient to prove that there was a violation. So they're assuming an element, which is that the laws apply. They have no evidence to support that. They haven't even, okay. And just being physically in California is not sufficient facts to show that the code applies or the Constitution. So that's why we're doing that. And then there's the discovery request that we're asking, of course, for evidence to support the claims that are being made. And I want to point something out here too, as if it's somehow relieving them of jurisdiction. Even if we say that they're right, that 701 and 702 does not allow a police officer to testify to prior statements that he made on the stop, that does not relieve the prosecution from proving and providing evidence to support the claim in discovery. So even giving them a pass on that nonsensical argument doesn't relieve the prosecution of the burden of proof, okay? What you want to watch out for is if they start claiming that the prosecutor doesn't have to prove that. So if the prosecutor doesn't have to prove that, you're literally being prosecuted by the judge, because in their words, only the judge can make that determination, and he's not making it based off the prosecutions. So the judge is going to be actually making an irrefutable presumption or claim against you that you can't challenge and that the prosecutor doesn't have to prove. If anyone thinks that's fair, then wow, you got serious problems. You're borderline. I mean, I would say somebody with such a broken sense of right and wrong is as antisocial personality. To say something like that it's absolutely ridiculous to think that the prosecutor can make claims and he doesn't have to actually prove them. So be wary of that and know that that's the kind of trash that you're going to have to deal with.
Okay, we got a bad connection here, Mark. You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay, I don't know what's going on, but all right. Well, we'll see if we contact me off air and we'll answer. I can answer any other. Oh, well, he dropped off. So, all right. Well, one of the things too that I wanted to talk about with Brian, of course, is we never want to be raising issues that are just legal interpretation. All right. Anyway, let me get. I'll get back to it. We've got a caller who's impatient. Area code 334. You're live on the big show. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, sir. My name is Brian, and I'm calling from Phoenix City, Alabama. And basically, I'm kind of new to all of this, Mark. I picked up your book and your script about 3 weeks ago. I was detained, not officially arrested. And on December 25th of 2016, I had been going door to door to preach the gospel. And the last person I visited after a couple dozen houses called the authorities on me. And as I was on foot, I wasn't in my vehicle. As I was walking down the highway, two officers came that had been called from the previous person I had visited. They asked me to stop and, question me what I was doing. I told them, and I told them, well, I'm going to continue on my journey and, leave me alone. Let me do my thing. And they refused. They asked me to stop. So I complied with their demands. I was I was tased twice, put in handcuffs, beaten, denied medical care at that point, and taken to jail. Later, I was released on my own cognizance, but after I had relatives come and pick me up, a judge had signed an order for me to And I went and got treatment. That, like I said, the day of arrest or detainment was the 25th. Well, this officer of the law basically he didn't put charges on me till the 4th of January after I got out of medical treatment. I currently hired a lawyer, and I am going to court. There's so many holes in this case, and that's one of them about the medical treatment. But I'm currently reading your book, and
well, hold on one second, Brian. I got to meet you up. We're up against the break. My name is Mark Stevens. You're listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, and also streaming live on my YouTube channel, No State Project. If you're not subbed, get subs because you won't know when we're going live. So especially like today, because we had to split things up. But we'll be back with Brian in Phoenix City in just a moment, so don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on the Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM, the Liberty Radio Network, of course, and streaming live from No State Project on YouTube. Get subbed so that, hey, because I am planning on doing more shows, especially with the role playing. So hopefully, if you're subbed, you'll know when I am going live. So if we're doing an unannounced live broadcast, you can check it out. I'd like to have some of these where if I'm able to call and do statist, an anarchist versus a statist. And so hopefully, but I got to we'll get back to Brian. I do want to say that when you say that the Constitution applies because they're putting people in prison, and putting people in prison is evidence that the code applies, you are saying might makes right. You're saying your justification to support your claim that the code applies is because you put other people in prison. And you're actually arguing that that is a moral right for them to do that, that it's not wrong for them to do that. But I'll get back to that. I want to bring... that if someone's accusing... look, I'm not spending the entire show on one damn person. But I want to bring Brian back. Okay, so you were saying that there was... all right. So what have you actually been charged with here?
Disorderly conduct as a Class C misdemeanor in the state of Alabama. This has been dragged out. Like I said, this happened in 2016 Christmas Day. I've currently hired an attorney who is who the DA, I had to at this point. I've tried to plead with the DA to get all these charges dismissed and dropped, and of course that doesn't work. I mean, I've been there in person, but that's what I've been charged with. And I pled not guilty from the beginning. This is I haven't had a trial date yet. They've just changed it. I've actually had 2 times I've been to court. One time to plea, and the second time I didn't get seen for whatever reason. They pushed me aside again. And so I'm currently waiting on another motion that my lawyer has filed. There were some things they did that were kind of shifty, but without getting into all of that. So that's what I've been charged with. And, so the DA wants to push this whole matter for whatever reason. My lawyer and I, we've already talked about it. There's really no leg for them to stand on given the circumstances and the laws. Because in the state of Alabama, what I've learned from him in this matter is after a year, a misdemeanor can't be held valid unless the judge signs an order from or the arrest. And this is a charge from the arresting officer, the person that actually called the police on me, by the way, Mark. He's not even pressing charges. And when I brought this up to the DA, they won't even, they say that doesn't matter, and so, and the fact that I was, and this officer, he's supposed to bring charges against me of this disorderly conduct on the day of supposed arrest, which I was not arrested. He did it after I got out of medical treatment, which makes no sense, from the 25th. And this was on the 3rd or 4th of January once he filed this. And my whole conclusion of the matter is he's scared because, I actually have a civil suit. I mean, I was tased twice and I was beaten in handcuffs. I mean, I have a federal thing here. So I'm just calling to kind of educate myself if there's anything I can relay as far as, to my lawyer, more or less, like how I could help myself. Because I before I discovered you and trying to do these things on my own, I did try it, but not knowing what I know, and I haven't finished reading your book. But it's been a tough battle on your own, just like you say in the beginning in the first few chapters. It's not easy.
No. Well, the problem is, have you actually made a jurisdictional argument? Have you actually pointed out in a motion to dismiss that the prosecution does not have the evidence? And you can even go so far as say, look, and if the prosecutor is arguing this stupid thing that he's put other people in jail, and that's evidence, that putting other people in jail does not prove that the laws apply to you or to them. I talk about a non sequitur. Non sequitur. Now you're talking basic logic and reason here. That's got nothing to do with these criminal courts. So, but the point, have you made these? Have you attacked the prosecution's claims of jurisdiction yet?
Not in front of the judge, but I have in person on 3 different occasions. And for whatever reason, the DA, this assistant DA, is not letting go of the matter, and she wants to go to trial. Even my lawyer tried, and he's got a motion now. They pawned me off in another court, and now he's put in a motion for me to go back before the municipal court. And so, no, sir, we have yet to go to any type of trial. It was just the informal getting up in front of the judge with the prosecution, myself, and a witness. And, of course, no one was subpoenaed at the time, no officers or anything. But, no, sir, they really want this to go to trial. And so I'll find out this upcoming week when the motion is granted, hopefully when my next court date will be. I mean, this has been going on for, like I said, since 2016. And at this point, I don't even understand why this DA doesn't understand, like, this is not even really valid. Even on that aspect, I know what you're saying. That's what I'm learning about from you, the jurisdictional thing, but it doesn't make any sense to me.
I am going to go on a limb here and use some inductive reasoning, which is supposed to be valid in courts. I'm going to say that based on my experience and the fact that you have a lawyer, he has probably waived speedy trial rights.
You said waived my trial rights? Speedy
trial rights. Has he requested any continuances for you, or have you done that?
No, I have not done it, nor has he at this point. I thought this would be the best manner. Yes, sir.
You have to still talk to him because you may not be aware of it. That's not something that these honorable men tend to do. They tend to do things without telling you. And that's the thing. I love how Rudy Giuliani gets on there and says that they are making hush payments without their client's knowledge. Oh, my. Wow. Whoa. I don't even, they're busy people. I don't even tell them. Oh my gosh, you could be implicating them in serious crimes and you don't tell them. So I would definitely ask him first, because if he's being honest and he has not waived speedy trial rights, it seems like a pretty slam dunk for him to just file a motion for denial of a speedy trial, since it's been going on since 2016 and it's well past that time. But first, you got to verify that he has not waived speedy trial rights, and then say, look, I want this filed like now against them.
Yes, sir. That's exactly why I'm calling. I'm taking notes as we converse here, and and I will. I talked to him yesterday, so at this point, that was the only thing he told me without going into detail. But I will get with him Monday and ask him that as we wait on this motion, and I'll find out one way or the other, and I will do that. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. And you don't have. I know you're from Alabama, but you don't have to say sir. It's just Mark.
Yeah, that's how I was raised. Yes, sir. Exactly.
Well, you know what? Hey,
even beat it out of me.
why don't we show, we can demonstrate just how stupid this class of lawyers are. You can refer to me as Your Highness, and I will refer to you as the Honorable Brian from Phoenix City.
That makes me blush. No, it doesn't sound good. I guess that's how you feel when the shoe's on the other foot. But yes, sir, that's just how I was raised in my house, so my home. But
I get that. Well, let me know what happens. So good luck, and let me know what happens.
Thank you again for your time, Mark.
You're welcome. Appreciate the call. The number is you'd think after all these years I would know that. I do know the number, but 218-632-9399. That's 218-632-9399. The passcode is 2020 with the # or the hashtag. You can also get me on Skype at Frank Rizzo 3. That's Frank Rizzo with the number 3. And we'll get you up. Please instant message me first. And we're almost at the end. We'll be moving into the third of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the Liberty Radio Network. And that's the thing. You're going to see that when you look at things as they are, and you don't accept sacred cows, and you refuse to accept logical fallacies, you're going to see clearly that you're dealing with criminals, and the desperation that people have. that somebody comes out and uses, I'm up against the break, but uses jail as objective evidence that the laws apply, and then say that I'm conflating. But I'm going to go see if I can find that actual. It's on the other video. I won't be able to do that, but I'll go back into one of the other videos and get one of the comments and address that directly when we get back. So don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the No State Project. I'm your host, Mark Stevens, author of Government Indicted, a full model for how to effectively defend yourself. And yes, we have actual evidence on markstevens.net to show that. We're in the third of 3 hours of Anarchy Radio right here on the No State Project because we disagree. We don't believe as normal, rational adults and even children that having a ruling class is moral and ethical. And that doing business at the barrel of a gun, forcing strangers to give you money, no, it may be legal, but it is certainly immoral and certainly wrong. And for those who are asking on the YouTube, on the chat, the reason why every 15 minutes I just sit here or I leave is because I'm actually streaming the LRN show. My show was streamed as originated from LRN for 7 or 8 years, and I'm glad to be a longtime member of the network. And I just started recently doing the stream on YouTube, and so that's that. And the reason why I don't normally talk during the segments because it's easier for me to edit and get the audio up there at markstevens.net. I'm a one-man show here now. And I do all the editing and everything myself, so that's why. So if it's easier to do the editing, then I do. It would be a nightmare otherwise. So I actually looked up that comment, and I for those new, I mean, you know, in the first segment, I think I addressed this, but this is what Misty posed. The evidence that the laws apply just because of one's physical location is what happens to one who violates the laws in that physical location. Of course, this is totally illogical. One, it's a non sequitur. Putting what happens to one, if they're prosecuted and they are put in jail or shot in the process, that is not evidence proving the laws apply. That does not prove that the police officer was right when he pulled you over. And to say otherwise, nobody can explain that. This is a very, very common one. It goes back a long time. I mentioned this before. I confronted Scott Bales on this, who's the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court, whose actual opinions seem to matter to people, okay? He's still the Chief Justice. I asked him in the rotunda after they ran interference when I was confronting him on this, and he made the same claim. The facts or the evidence proving the laws apply to me right now, being in Arizona, is because they put other people in prison. And I asked him point blank, this is a Harvard law grad. He has 2 advanced university degrees. Not an uneducated man, a very smart man. And he could not answer the question. So the question is, how does putting other people in prison prove that your laws apply to me right now? Where is it? It's a non sequitur. The two are not meaningfully related at all. The one does not prove the other. And here's another thing too. The argument that's being left on YouTube, not necessarily by, it's not everybody, not all the critics, but one critic has come by, and one that seems to be one of these disgraceful group of lawyers, that jurisdiction is a pure issue of law, requires absolutely no evidence. It's not a question of evidence whether the Constitution applies to you. Now, if you go back to the Scott Bales confrontation, he said, when I asked him, what facts do you rely on to prove that your Constitution and code apply to me just because I'm physically in Arizona? He did not say jurisdiction was a pure issue of law requiring no evidence and mark that your question is not valid. Your question has the premise of your question is wrong. I have gone on YouTube. I've seen the comments on your videos. And as the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court, I'm going to have to go with the internet lawyers, and I'm going to have to agree with them that your question is not formatted right. No, he said the evidence proving the laws apply are the other people that are in prison. Never made, so they said that you can't even have a consensus as to whether jurisdiction requires evidence or not. But the consensus always is, and from the critics, I'm a scammer. Really, I'm a scammer. So if I force people to give me money, I'm a criminal. Could you explain why that same standard doesn't apply to the government whose ass you can't seem to get your lips off of? That you can't stop praising these people? Even if we accept that I'm a scammer, what does it mean when they are forcing people to pay them? What does that make them? Oh, that's right. You're looking for logical consistency from these people. So Misty will turn around and say that they can say why they determine the laws applied. But if I ask them to show the evidence that proves that they were accurate, all of a sudden that's off limits. Do you understand that asking them to prove that their prior statement is true is asking them why and how their statement is true? Why did you determine that the laws apply to me? So this is beating a dead horse at this point. You're talking to somebody who is going to continually disagree with me no matter what I say. Yeah, well, Mark, they can say why they thought why they pulled you over. Well, why they pulled me over was because they said I was violating the law. Well, why did they determine I was subject to the law? What led them to believe that the laws applied? And then they're going to cry foul on that. No, it goes directly to competency and credibility, not because I misunderstand the rules. I think we have a Skype caller here, so I'm glad I didn't disconnect. We have a Skype caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Oh, I'm sorry. The caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from? Damn it. We'll do it again. We'll try this a third time. Skype caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Are you referring to me, Mark?
I am. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Johnny Enigma. I'm actually not calling from Skype. I was just calling to listen in. However, I'm looking at your website. Well, actually, the tunein.com. Are you actually in Cameron, Texas?
No, I'm most of the time I actually live in Mesa, Arizona, and every 2 weeks I broadcast from California.
Okay, well that's what I thought, but that's what it's showing here, which is actually not very far from me. So I was going to offer to buy you lunch.
Oh.
In any case, I just called to listen in.
Oh, okay. Well, LRN does have a listener line. You can also go to the audio. I think it'd be better on this particular line. So do you think? So let me ask you: Do you believe that government, the men and women that comprise the organization we call government, do you believe that they are a moral organization?
I think that there are a few moral people, very, very few moral people within the organization, but as a whole, no, absolutely not.
Right. So I'm getting to the way they're supposed to operate. So that I'm not talking about a few bad apples. I'm talking about the way they are supposed to operate as an organization. Is that moral or immoral?
On the whole, I would say immoral. I mean, basically what's happened is let's say you and I and just a handful of other people, something happens to the world and everything's destroyed and there's only just a small group of us left and we're trying to survive, and we find a nice area with a lot of natural resources and a little body of water, and we all come into an agreement of how we're going to all operate and kind of rebuild things, right? Everything's peaceful. None of us really has a right to impose our will on the other. However, let's say, another group of people that we didn't know existed happen upon us, and they say, oh, well, we're going to, take all your food. We're going to defecate in your only water supply and all that. It's kind of a natural thing.
We're up against the break, so just hold on a second. So defecate in your water supply is how we're going to pick this one up. So just hold on a second, Johnny. Defecating in the water supply. Wow. I was just thinking of Woody from Toy Story. Somebody's defecated in the water hole. We'll be back here on the No State Project with Johnny Enigma in just a moment, so don't go away. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on LRN.FM and streaming live on my YouTube channel. I want to bring back Johnny Enigma talking about someone defecating in the water hole. Welcome back. So why don't we...
Thanks.
I tell you, it sounds like the YouTube, a lot of YouTube comments.
Yeah.
It's like it's a metaphor for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so continue with this doomsday scenario.
Yeah, so we have this core group of people who are just trying to either build or rebuild something and just trying to survive. And, we have a group of outsiders that come in and basically threaten to, destroy our resources and our very existence. It's kind of a natural thing that we're going to, the core group of us is going to enter into some kind of mutual understanding about how things will operate for our survival, how we'll protect our resources, and things like that. And off on a tangent, there actually was a very old Supreme Court case, and the citation escapes me at the moment. But they talked about how, even the so-called Jews, they in of themselves couldn't be all encompassing. In other words, they could not. It's just impossible for them to be their own doctor and their own farmer and their own shoemaker, and there's just too many different things to be. So they talked about kind of the natural progression of things and how people, in a sense, not give up their rights, but give up certain rights to kind of operate as a group of people and to survive. So, but what happens every time throughout history is you have this core group of people who are trying to build something, and they establish a kind of a common set of rules that they all agree on to protect themselves, to protect their resources, to ensure their environment. And then as time goes on, what happens is a few people get the idea, hey, you know what? This actually could be much more. This could be huge commerce. We could turn this whole mutual mindset thing and all these rules that we've all agreed on into a very lucrative business. If somebody urinates on our water supply, instead of taking them out and stoning them, we'll charge them some money. If somebody does this, we'll charge them some money. If somebody does that, we'll charge them some money. And that's typically what happens. Typically, when any society gets started, there's a set of rules that, for the most part, everybody agrees to, and it legitimately, in the beginning, is just for the protection of the people and their survival and the protection of their resources. But over time, it gets very highly commercialized. And that's when it also becomes very highly immoral, because as we know, in our present day society, it's all about the money. It has very little to do with justice and a whole lot to do with money.
Well, but what are you getting to? I'm trying to, I thought you would get a scenario that we would have some kind of ethical or moral dilemma that you were getting to, because, at least as far as the United States and pretty much every government has always been started by conquest. If you concede that there were like Caspia in Italy, that was there for several hundred years before they were conquered by the Vatican. They didn't start out as a government and then got corrupted. So you look at the United States government, from the very beginning, the 13 colonies working together and becoming states and working together, immediately launched a war of aggression and expansion while they were fighting the British. So, and other Americans. So that's something I don't,
Sure, yeah.
So what is it that you're actually getting to?
Well, it's basically, you cannot have any kind. If you look at very, very early laws, there actually weren't. All of them were geared towards kind of keeping the peace, sort of thing. But over time, they get very commercialized, and greed ruins everything, and we have a greedy society, and that leads to. I've heard police officers say openly, I'll put a bullet in your back if I have to feed my kids. And that's just, it's just about the money. And when you get that kind of greed and the corporatization of government, it becomes all about money. They don't care about your rights. They don't care what the law says. They don't care. And when I say the law, I'm talking about the law that they have bound themselves to and sworn to uphold and defend. They say the law applies because the law applies, and it's a stupid argument, but whatever. they themselves have bound themselves to it, and they don't uphold and enforce it because it's just, everything's greed and it's commercial, and all morals are out the window.
Well, it's always been about control. The money is just a means to control. It's just about having control. It's what it all comes down to. And I think the big problem is when I know this is the problem. It's when a small group of people are able to convince the rest of the people that basic principles of right and wrong don't apply to them, and that they're somehow special and different and honorable. And then you've got people like, some of the critics that just they continue this deification of them. Well, the basic principles of right and wrong don't apply to them. They're immune from that. It does not apply to them.
Yeah,
that's the big problem.
When
you have people that believe that this small group of people have a moral right to do what they're doing, and that the basic principles of logic don't even apply to that. And that's another thing about why people say that statism is a religion, because you've got people that say that basic principles of right and wrong and basic principles of logic simply do not apply to them, that they can just literally say that our rules govern and that's why, and that the evidence to prove that those rules apply is that they're willing to put you in jail or kill you in the process of getting your compliance. And then you get these people that go on your YouTube channel and parrot that same stuff, and then try to claim that when you bring up how obviously wrong it is, well, I'm just saying it. I'm not saying might equals right.
Right. Yeah.
That's the problem you have. So if you're saying that these rules don't apply, they apply to everyone else, 97% of the rest of the world, but they don't apply here, now you've got nothing but trouble. And that's what I go through in the book too.
What you're talking about is the difference between law and politics. They know, they've sworn an oath to uphold the law, whatever it may be. They know that the law applies to them, but on the political side, they know that, hey, we all work in the system together. And if this guy tries to get me prosecuted, well, the judge is a really good friend of mine, and the prosecutor who would be handling this case. And, we go to dinner every Friday, and it takes a lot of work. I've gone after several public officials, and their own laws, their penal code, their code of criminal procedure is extremely clear on what they're supposed to do when they're given a complaint, but they never do it. And then you have to go after the one who failed to perform his duty to handle the complaint. And then the next guy is going to try to protect the first guy. And you basically have to keep going after him until you come full circle, and then hit him with, federal, civil, and criminal RICO, and kind of pit the state against the feds, or the fed against the state, or whatever it is. It's what you're talking about is more politics than it is law. And that's why they have that attitude.
Well, yeah. Well, I have to let you go. We're up against a break, and I am. I got a few other calls I'd like to get to, but I appreciate the call, Johnny. I'm going to keep you on hold because that's why you were calling in initially. So we're going to mute you back up, only not drop you. But we'll get to other calls and more contradictions in just a moment here on the Big Show. In fact, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to have to. Yeah, we'll take a break. Welcome back to the No State Project. So when questioned regarding evidence proving the Constitution and code apply, one listener likes to put it, and this is a direct quote, it's called power/jurisdiction. Welcome to planet Earth. Wow. You see, what I threw on the show on Wednesday, and yes, I will be live again on a Wednesday broadcast. There's a serious contradiction at play here. The laws that people seem to worship, that they are magical and apply to everybody. If you go back into the actual law, it does not talk about jurisdiction being power, and that's how jurisdiction is, okay? It talks about power being as authorized by the Constitution. It never said that the Constitution was by conquest, like it is, like that's reality. But you look at the organic law, and like the Declaration of Independence, and it says that it is by consent, that the American government anyway is supposed to be by consent, not by conquest. Now, it is by conquest in reality, but here you have where reality contradicts their law. And that's what you have to expect when you're talking about laws. It's contradiction after contradiction after contradiction. At no point is somebody who's saying that I am misinterpreting Rule 701 and 702. At no time are they crying foul for the fact that police officers will give legal testimony, legal opinions, and legal conclusions during their testimony on the stand. They're not saying, the Mark, that's not fair. The cops shouldn't be doing that. The judge should not allow that. That's not right. We can object to that, and I definitely object to that. But it is always ignored. They are allowed to do whatever the hell they want as long as it makes the prosecution look good. So I don't see where there's anyone claiming, well, the prosecutors are getting away with it, and they shouldn't be. These judges are unfair by allowing prosecution witnesses to give legal conclusions on direct examination. But contradictions is what you have to expect. So either the power called jurisdiction, the power to act, either that jurisdiction is simply power or it's from the Constitution. And saying that the Constitution applies because of the power and not the other way around, it's circular, and it's really a contradiction. I don't know why someone is accusing me of reification personified. When I say the state, I'm not saying it actually exists. I've been the one saying there is no government. It's just men and women forcing us to pay them. I am creating a contradiction that doesn't exist outside of my imagination. Okay, why don't you call the show sometime and set me straight? So even though it says that it's by consent, and you're saying that power and I can't deal with this anymore. Talking with people who are statists are just, how do you keep track of all that? But we've got Sebastian from Los Angeles. Welcome back to the big show.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I'm doing well. We're almost done here. So what can I do for you? You got good news?
Well, I'm going to have a hearing for a parking offense in Santa Monica, California this Wednesday, and I wanted to run some stuff by you.
Okay.
Well, the main thing that I object to is that they don't even have the cops show up, so I'm denied confrontation and cross-examination.
Yeah, it's nice.
And
it's nice when they don't. A lot of times they don't show up.
Well, I mean, it's not even required for this kind of setup. So I'm going to argue to the hearing officer or whatever the judge they call the judge, that that should be something that I should be able to be entitled to.
What kind of trial?
I've been listening to.
Wait, what kind of trial is this?
It's just a parking violation.
Oh, it's parking. So you could actually subpoena the. I wouldn't do it, but you could subpoena the agent who gave you the ticket because it is just parking. But still, the parking official has to make his determinations based on what's in the record. So now they don't even have the testimony of the agent who did it. They're limited just by the ticket. Well, you can ask them questions. Does the ticket have any evidence at all that would even suggest that the Constitution and Code apply to me? Because yes, right. You're not asking for a witness to testify. So it's not like Misty can start getting triggered and say, well, section 701 and 702, which has no application whatsoever to a parking ticket anyway. You're just asking if the evidence is in there. And he can only go based on what's on the ticket. So if it's not there, he legally and constitutionally and morally and ethically may, and by due process, may not subject his evidence that is there evidence proving this?
Okay, and the others, I mean, I kind of say, oh, you have a driver's license or you have a vehicle registration. That's jurisdiction. That's like, they'll say it's a contract. You agreed, that kind of thing.
Well, they're not going to say it's a contract because it absolutely is not a contract. Okay. It is definitely not a contract. And anyone who thinks that it is a contract, there are at least 4 factual elements which have to be present for there to be a contract, which also applies to the written instrument called the Constitution. There has to be, the big thing is there has to be a meeting of the minds and there has to be a freely given agreement. Do this or we'll put you in prison doesn't qualify for that. That's criminal and immoral. So you can ask them whether I have a driver's license. Are you saying that is evidence proving the Constitution applies to me? And
okay,
that's usually enough to get on the back. I have had judges. There was a judge.
Garcia they'll abandon that at that point.
Yeah. When the judges are insisting that the ticket is evidence, you ask, really? So what on this ticket leads you to believe it's evidence proving your Constitution applies to me? Can you just cite it for me? What on here? Again, we're not asking a witness this. We're asking the judge, who is the only one who can say whether the laws apply, if there's evidence to do so.
And I'm glad that lately you've been really hammering on the prima facie thing, because they did send me a letter. I sent a demur over there, and then they replied non-responsive, just saying that, oh, well, the ticket is prima facie evidence. And then I responded, well, that's not evidence that the laws and codes apply.
Well, you want to say, you can say that, yes, and say, again, it's the same thing that you can ask them when you go in there on Wednesday. You ask, and call the show and let me know what happened. I will be live. You ask them what specifically on this ticket is evidence proving that your code applies, because prima facie is if there's any chance it could prove. So you want what on this ticket has any chance of proving that the Constitution and Code apply. So he could say, well, you were physically here. Is it, well, and then you ask him, how or why does my physical presence prove the Constitution, a written instrument, actually applies to me? So you can, because since he's the one that has to make the determination that the laws apply. So hold on 1 second. We're up against the break. I'll meet you up. My name is Mark Stevens, listening to the No State Project here on LRN.FM, where no matter how hard you want, there's no chance at all that your physical location can prove a written instrument called the Constitution actually applies to you. Hey, shut up. I'm sorry, I can't do those commercials. Yes, welcome back to the No State Project here on Liberty Radio Network, LRN.FM. Talking with Sebastian in LA, who's got a parking ticket trial or hearing in Los Angeles on Wednesday. So, Sebastian, any questions or concerns that you have for trying to hold them to their burden of proof and getting this thing tossed out? Oh, I had you muted. Sorry about that. I missed that.
Oh, yeah. They try and flip the burden on me.
Sure.
They say if you raise a defense to the citation, you're responsible for providing independently verifiable corroborated evidence to support the defense. And then they say your initial review request fails to present sufficient evidence to rebut the facts contained in the citation. And then they're like, oh, an on-site investigation shows that the sign was clear and visible, and so the citation considered valid. So they just totally were non-responsive to my saying that they have no evidence that the codes and laws apply to me just because I'm physically in California.
Well, what they're doing is they're ignoring the lack of evidence that you've raised, and they're trying to flip it on you as if you're making an affirmative defense against the claim where you're not doing that. What you're saying through a demur is that they have their claims are not sufficiently supported with facts. So definitely bring that up and say, look, you can ask him. So if the prosecution doesn't have sufficient evidence, isn't that enough to throw it out. Well, yeah, I've even had tax agents agree with that this week, and they're even anyway. So you just ask them those questions, So would I have to put it up in affirmative defense if there isn't sufficient evidence to support the prosecution's claims?
Right.
So, but get into the role playing and do some role playing for a few days before you go in on Wednesday, and definitely let me know if you have any other questions, and let me know on the Wednesday show, or just Skype me or email. Let me know what happened.
Okay, will do. Thank you, Mark.
I appreciate the call. We're not going to take any more calls for today's broadcast because I want to address this crap that's been coming up. I hate how slow this gets when I'm. Okay, so Misty is saying, wow, the ticket is prima facie. That's exactly what Galt said. And then I point out that even according to the standard of prima facie evidence is whether the facts have any chance of proving the proposition. And she came back and said that whether there's no chance is just my opinion. She's and this appeal to I guess she just makes a generalization. This is just some bad logic. She's saying that obviously that there is she says, obviously there is a chance, or all cases would be immediately dismissed. Does it ever enter into your mind that judges don't do the right thing? They order psychological evaluations of people who challenge them. They are criminals. And you think that in every case, judges are going to do the right thing? They hold it as irrefutably true. If you challenge them on it, not that you're challenging a witness, you're challenging the prosecution, and you're challenging whether the judge is making the determination based on evidence. And instead of answering that, they sometimes threaten you with a psychological evaluation. The faith that you have in judges doing the right thing is just mind-blowing. The idea that I'm wrong, even though I have spoken to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, I have gotten statements from a federal magistrate that the application of federal law is arbitrary and not based on evidence. That you would say something like that. So the judge who makes the decision of whether there is a chance disagrees with your opinion of no chance. No, what he's doing is he's hiding and he's covering for the prosecution, and he's using threats of violence and actual violence to not allow any of that issue. The psychopath Larry Burns threatened Mike with jail if he brought the issue up. So if the judges were honest and allowed the discussion and actually were applying the facts to the allegation, or to see if the facts did support the allegation, they would just come out and do that. This is some real misplaced faith in a group of criminals. And it's really, I don't know what your background is, but you really are so off base to think that just because judges say something, one, that it's true, and that in all cases they do the right thing. Let's see. What do we have contemporary wise from a federal judge? Oh, that's right. Prosecutorial misconduct is at epidemic levels because judges don't stop it, because judges allow it to happen. So the idea that judges are honorable, no, they gave themselves that. And for you to put such confidence and to base your argument off of, well, if that were true, all cases would be dismissed. Wow. I would have to think that even Juan Galt would disagree with such a stupid claim. The reason why he had to go to the Supreme Court, allegedly, and why he had to go into court to fight on behalf of people was because judges did not do the right thing. Wow, that is incredible. The things that you hang your hat on are just Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't want to speculate there. The judges, look, I even have a law professor. I've spoken to prosecutors. The best that they can do is to say they don't need evidence. So if you take that the prosecution doesn't need evidence, then what's on the ticket, how do you, if you're saying that it is prima facie evidence, but then the prosecution is saying that they don't need evidence, I can't keep track of these. These are so. This is what you have to, what you get into. Well, Mark, they don't need evidence at all, but then they're saying, but they need prima facie evidence. Which one is it? If they don't need evidence, then the prima facie isn't even an issue. But if you're saying prima facie is an issue, once again, if you believe your physical location, if that there is any chance that that can prove the proposition or the claim that the laws apply, any chance, please explain how your physical presence and only your physical don't go into the future about execution. Just tell me, how does my physical presence, what is in the ticket, other people being prosecuted, is not on the ticket? You know what? Yeah, that's what people start talking about flat earth. Prosecuting me is not on the ticket. Other people being prosecuted are not on the exactly how there's a chance and why and how my physical location proves a written instrument called the Constitution actually applies to me. If you cannot show that, then there is no chance. Even Juan Gold said, my physical presence does not prove the Constitution applies to me. No chance. Is not my opinion. That is what logic dictates. Basic principles of logic dictate that, not because it's my opinion. Opinion is the laws apply because they say so. That's an opinion. That's an opinion. So again, we get full circle with this poster. If you believe that there's any chance, tell me what the hell all these judges you're talking about, tell me exactly what facts they are basing the rebuttable presumption on. They're saying that there is prima facie, these facts constitute prima facie evidence, being your physical location. That's prima facie evidence the laws apply. Tell me exactly how that works. Because you can do that. You can do what the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court couldn't do, what a federal judge and many federal judges have not been able to do, many prosecutors. Law professor up in Canada said there is no evidence. It's not based on evidence. It's not based on argument. It's based on a blunt assertion of power, not the Constitution, a blunt assertion of power. So that's where I'd love to see. I'm probably going to, I will be live on Wednesday. So maybe somebody can call and cite a comment that was made by Misty there. There actually is evidence proving that just because I'm physically in Arizona, the Constitution and laws apply. But till next time, salud. I need to end the stream.